And Eric, can you confirm you can see my screen? Let me just make it full screen mode here.
Let's see. It's great. Yeah, I see it.
All right, super.
Good to go.
All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning. This is Victor and from Parallels and Eric from the XenApp blog this morning to afternoon, depending where you are. And I think today we'll be speaking about Parallels Remote Application Server version 16.5, along how can we save your existing Citrix costs using our own technology. We're actually very pleased to announce that last week we released an updated version. We're bringing some very cool new features related to autoscaling, and it also includes a Citrix migration tool where we can collect information from your existing Citrix 6 or 6.5 environments and bring them to Parallels RAS. So before we begin, Eric, do you want to add anything else, or should we get started?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This is Eric from XenApp blog in sunny Brazil. Right now it's 1 o'clock here. I was up 5 o'clock this morning because we had this same webinar in the Europe as well. So this is going to be the last one for the day, and then I'm going to relax. So we're just going to jump in. There's a lot of new details, a lot of interest in this new version 16.5 that was released, as Victor said, last week. And if you're using the Automation Framework Community Edition, that has already been updated with the latest release. So just to mention that. So take it away, Victor.
Yeah, okay, super. So remote application server in general, or even the Parallels business, we're known, mostly for our virtualization technology, in the Mac world. And over the last 3 years, we acquired a technology, and it's called Parallels Remote Application Server, that it's competing directly to Citrix environments, especially in the SMB market. Of course, we do have customers in the enterprise level or ISVs or MSPs, but ideally, because of cost and simplicity, we're very friendly, very easy to use, and so on. Along with the Parallels product family, besides Parallels Desktop and RAS, we have also Toolbox and as well a tool for SCCM to manage Macs in a production or corporate environments. But let's focus today in remote application server. So probably you have seen this type of approach before. You have your applications running in RDS, or it could be running on Citrix, and you want to move them to a virtualized environment, and you want them to be streamed to any devices. Those devices could be Macs, could be PCs, could be iPads, and so on. So RAS is basically being the vehicle to deliver the applications to your end users, where you have control, you have the ability to deliver them on HTML5 format or other vehicles. So the idea here is, in fact, is growing more and more on the HTML5 arena because it's clientless. And when you use RAS with HTML5, we have the ability to do printing, we have the ability to do file transfer, so you don't have to use multiple products. So when we talk about cutting down your existing Citrix cost by 60%, sometimes we only replace XenApp and XenDesktop, but if you're using FileShare, NetScaler, or other products, that savings could be even greater. And also, it simplifies the access points, the management, deployment, maintenance, and so on. So during this webinar, after we go to the presentation, we will demonstrate to you how Parallels works. We'll show you how the new auto-scaling features works as well, and briefly how also the migration tools that we provided in this new version can help you out. If you're concerned if we have certifications with hardware providers like HPE, Lenovo, Dell, and other vendors, we have OEM certifications with them as well, and we are also cloud ready, which means we have our offering today in Azure Marketplace, with the updated version, and as well in the AWS Marketplace as well. Now, 2 years ago, We have been named as a major player, so this dot is a little bit bigger now. We're actually updating this particular IDC white paper, where we win a lot of those opportunities of frustrated Citrix customers. Also, in some degrees, compliance problems with pure Microsoft RDS deployments. How do I increase the security? How do I control my clients? Or I want to use HTML5, which Microsoft now has an HTML5 client, but it's very limited. So we're exactly in between of, Citrix and Microsoft pure technologies, and we're bringing a lot of value to our customer base. By the way, if you have questions, please post them in the chat window or the Q&A we'll be addressing in the end of the webinar as well. The key benefits or the pillars of our technology, it's related to security, like encrypting the information between point to point, making sure you are using highest TLS certifications or encryption for you and your end users, the high performance user interface. So we leverage the best and new features coming in Microsoft Remote FX capabilities or the RDP protocol. We also have our own channels related to channel printing and as well file transfer, so it doesn't interfere with the performance of the RDP protocol. And over time, talking to our customers, we also added new features like drag and drop. So if you have a Windows or a Mac client with Parallels RAS, we enable now the drag and drop feature. So you don't have to upload files, manipulate it, and insert it. So it's now natively available in the product. In terms of on-demand flexibility, we introduced in version 16.5 a feature that is present into Citrix BVS or other tools or MCS to some degree, that you can use templates to clone RDSH servers or even VDIs and scale it up when you have peak user consumption. And once the user waves, like in the beginning of the day or when all of the time zones are working, and then everybody logs off or part of the groups log off, we automatically drain those VMs and take them out of the pools. So using Profile Manager and other features behind the scenes, it's seamless to the end user. They don't know what is your workload, but we help you to use in a much better, smarter way your existing resources. That helps to reduce the TCO. And if you are looking to do more VDI using a remote application server, that it's also available. In fact, part of version 16.5, we have redesigned our VDI approach. Now we can have failover on VDI, and we don't require to have what we used to call VDI agents per hypervisor. It is a single or multiple agents talking to multiple hypervisors based upon our location, but you can just use one if you wish. So it is simplified and easier to use. By default, when you install Remote Application Server, you have the VDI agent installed, so you can start using right away. And as part of the TCO part, if you want to use application publishing, desktop, remote PC, auto scaling, or any other features of Remote Application Server, it's all included in the price. So for enterprise customers, it's around $99 per user per year. It's concurrent, by the way. And for service providers, we have like a monthly billing based upon peak concurrent users. So it's very flexible the way you can choose. 2 different SKUs, whatever works best for you, not different price tiers and so on. On the client policy side, this is actually very cool because from the main console, you can set what is the predicted behavior for the clients, which includes your HTML5 client. Can be file transfer, can be certificate verification, can be connections, can be detection of the internet connection or even the profiles of the connections users can be using. But the filtering part is based on where the user is logging from. you can allow them to see an application or not. So that's actually fairly cool. Multi-factor authentication, we have been doing that for quite some time, but the biggest new introduction that we have done where we work with Microsoft, it is the introduction of Azure MFA or Azure AD MFA, where we're using the radius token in version 16.5. We also added different templates for Duo and a couple of other vendors because we had a lot of requests last year for customers using other products. So you can see the flexibility here on the MFA side. And we also provide monitoring and reporting for free. The monitoring and reporting is not us monitoring reporting here. It is you installing a monitoring tool and a reporting tool that you can see what applications users are using, for how long they're logged in, and other information around their particular user infrastructure. The performance of the UI, here's just a screenshot showing you different ways to do it or different ways to access remote application server. In education, for example, the fastest growing technology or computer in place, it's Chrome OS or Chromebooks. You can either use a dedicated client for Chrome OS or use HTML5. And of course, for Android, iOS, and other platforms, it's a given. The technology provides that for you, to be used. Actually, we encourage customers in POCs or even just to play around, try those clients and see the difference, what we have implemented on our own, for example, the magnifier that is Parallels proprietary information and how it makes it easier to access those out. On the deployment side, I mentioned before, we work on pretty much any hardware. For VDI, we have certifications to run on Nutanix, Lenovo, HPE. Cloud providers, we can work with Amazon, Microsoft Azure, but if you're starting to experiment application publishing on Google Cloud, it's also part of what we cover today. Now, on the hypervisor level, we pretty much work with all vendors. Citrix XenServer, VMware ESXi, Hyper-V, and of course, the KVM base using pure KVM Libret or even Acropolis from Nutanix. A big advantage we have on the RD session hosts, it is related to Windows servers. With the single console that you install remote application server, you can oversee RD session hosts running the latest and greatest version of Windows Server 2016, and you can go back all the way to Windows Server 2003 Service Pack 1. Single. And on VDI, of course, we pretty much work with Windows VDIs. And on the application containerizations and packaging, we work with Turbo.NET, which means integrated with our console. And if you're using AppV, especially if you're using AppV Scheduler, you can have your packages launched automatically from a session without copying them to every single session host. In the TCO reduction, let's talk about a little bit more of the details now. The idea is to reduce the complexity as the first level. So you don't have to have very complex infrastructure to do application publishing in VDI. You can use, our gateway technology. You can use our broker, and we take care on the load balancing and failure, the failover, to avoid, catastrophic failure in your organizations or applications being used. So the idea is we are self-monitoring our controllers and gateways and determining the best way traffic will be rerouted from one place to another. In the cost, I mentioned to you $99 per user or concurrent user. So you can do a ratio 1 to 3, 1 to 5. It depends on your model. And for SPLA customers or ISVs, we have a different model that is based upon on peak usage per month, and you get a bill the month after. Usually, you don't have to have third-party products. You use remote application server plus Windows servers and RDCals, and that's it. You get monitoring, you get application publishing, VDI, rebrandable portals, and other features that will be showing to you in a demo in a little bit. Okay, so this was I already mentioned, and let's talk about VDI for a moment before we talk about how do we replace the Citrix technology itself. So you can deploy VDI based on desktop-based VDI, which is typical like with Windows 7, XP, 8, or even Windows 10. We can use desktops based upon server-based VDI or session-based VDI. And there's actually a fourth one, which is not so much VDI. We call it remote PCs. So if you connect to your network via VPN just to connect to a computer here and there, you can use remote application server and install remote PC agent to that computer. Any additional cost? No, it just goes back to your subscription model of concurrent users. So why we are here? This is the big question. And in most cases, this is a very important information. In 90% of the cases, we receive a lead from, a customer looking to replace Citrix. We are winning 90% of the time. It's because of the package, it's because of the cost, and so on. So in this particular slide here, the key points that I usually like to highlight is related to deployment cycles. We can deploy in a farm for like 50 users, 100 users, or maybe 2,000 users. Remote application server can be deployed between 1 to 5 days with the proper hardware and planning in place. With Citrix, I know I have worked with technologies like that before. Can take a couple of weeks to have that up and running. Can be very, very complex and can be very, very long. Upgrades can be very tricky because, in Citrix, you have to plan the fixed spec with Windows version, service packs, and then have that aligned. The fact that we are very low intrusive into the operating system level, you can do your Windows updates on your own and the RAS updates independently, which is very, very important to keep Windows security patches up to date without waiting months or sometimes, a year or so. We have a complete synergy related to provide a single entry point, which is a web portal, for you could be called like storefront, where you can decide if you're using full client, HTML5 delivery, or just both, depending what you want to do. We don't have multiple consoles. We have a single console. So the entire product operation management is all done in the RAS console. And related to load balancers and NetScalers, with Citrix, you have to use NetScaler. We work with NetScaler, and we can use other firewalls or even our own load balancer to distribute the traffic. So the solution is complete, and you can pick and choose the best approach that would work for you. And related to the TCO, here are just a couple of examples. The TCO related to Citrix Enterprise replacement, or if you're using Horizon advanced features, how that could be changed or can be, saved from a Parallels perspective. So how do you make the change? 3 steps. You can install remote application server. We can push the RD session host agent and publish apps. Well, this is the approach we have been telling customers for a long time. But what you can do with our Citrix migration tool, you install remote application server. You can run our migration tool to assess your applications, application workers, workers groups, and zones, and then push the agents. So to make it even quicker, this transition process. So here's just an example with the migration tool where you install the PowerShell scripting language or the PowerShell API for XenApp, you run the extract, and then you push it into RAS. This whole process, it doesn't take more than 10 minutes to be done. You just need to extract, install RAS, and load the scripts, and then the migration will be, completed automatically. In terms of success stories, I have a few to share, and then we'll just jump into the demo. So this is, for example, related to Citrix migration. It's stack. They use primarily for Microsoft Office and other tools from the university. If you have your own ERP or other tool that has to be used, it's part of the migration. We can take them for you automatically. University of Cambridge, solution related especially to better deliver VDI solutions for their end users. This actually was no Citrix replacement. They were using regular PCs, and they started to move to virtualization, and we were the winner from a cost perspective and user experience review. And Salomon Guggenheim Museum, also a TCO win for us, related to migrate Citrix and custom applications with Microsoft Office. Now, from a demonstration perspective, let's now switch to my screen over here. So what I'll do first, I will use our HTML5 interface. And not sure if you can see my whole screen, but I'm using from a Mac. So we will authenticate my user against Active Directory. And with Active Directory authentication, we detected that I already have a Parallels client installed. So you can either push your clients through downloads or GPOs, or users can just come over here, click on Download Client. We detect the client you have. So here's a Mac client. And if they want to use the Parallels client directly without HTML5, the button Configure will push all of their settings for them. So like what would you see in Storefront, this is the entry point where the policies are enforced. I can see my apps and so on. In the Victors folder, I have different things. I have my VDI running Windows 10. I have shared desktop or just pure applications. So usually a good example is I can open Microsoft Excel. You can pick and choose the option. For example, the HTML5 client. And the HTML5 client, it's important to highlight that we smart size the application window in real time. So we prevent like the Windows login screen. And once the profile is loading, we're detecting the client. And by default, once the app is open, you can mimic a workspace. So you can see the applications here in the bottom. This button here brings back to the main screen. So let's go and open the Parallels console here if I'm an administrator. And while Excel here is open, we can create a new document. So let's say I want to open my back to school planner. If I create another file, and let's say this is going to be, a different calendar here. Like the desktop, you can toggle and switch around it. So it's just mimicking what you see in the desktop. With the documents created and done, what we do here in the printing mode, we have our universal printing technology. And universal printing integrates the remote side with the browser. So the user doesn't have to remember what local printer they have. You just pick the printer that is already available on the computer, like printing a web page, like a boarding pass or a document and so on. It's enabled by default. Now, from a security perspective or usability, depending how you see it, here in the bottom right, we have the copy and paste feature for HTML5, and as well the ability to do file uploads or downloads. So once a file is completed, you can just click on the download. It goes to my folder or share folder that I have on the InQuotes data center side, and I can grab a file, click on open, and that will be now downloaded to my local computer. Of course, this is policy-based. If I want to use multi-monitors or if I want to use a regular desktop, well, you just right-click on the assets or in the application or the desktop that you have, and then you can launch it with the client. What has been a very common question for me lately is, can I open a full Windows 10 VDI session on HTML5? The answer is yes. So if I right-click and open HTML5 client, in this case, we're opening a tab. And as you can see, the desktop is not using the whole screen yet. Well, so once the loading process is completed, we can maximize and use the full screen. So as you can see, we do a single sign-on to the desktop itself. The user doesn't have to log in again. And when you click on the button here to maximize, this Windows 10 that you see on the screen, it is using HTML5. So it's great for that matter. Of course, for users that prefer to use multi-monitors, they have latency or they want to use better features integrated with the client, no problem. They can use a regular client for that matter. Now, let's take a look now from a console perspective. And here I'll show you two different consoles because this is running a demo environment in my Azure. And also I want to highlight to you for on-premise customers, our new auto-scaling capability. So this is the console. Like I mentioned, one place for everything. Once you install RAS, we have wizards that you can add session hosts, you can publish applications, or even invite users, like sending an email, hey, welcome to my, Parallels environment, click here to download the client, and these are the settings for you. So once you have that running, we can have, or we provide you a bird's eye view of all of the clients and agents. So for example, one of my PCs or two of them, they're flagging high CPU usage as we speak. And one of my VDI controllers on Azure is also reporting high CPU consumption. Of course, we can drill down and find out more, but here we can see the overall health of our Parallels RAS farm. On the session host side, we can control number of users, how they're running, but the very key point when you're using load balancing features, we use resource-based technology and as well to optimize existing RDCals and prevent one user connecting to multiple servers. Here you can say, no, stick with just one. And of course, if you run out of resources, you can use another server later. So, and actually you can flag what would be the best way to do it. In the publishing side, this is where I see all of my apps, groups, and filterings. And the publishing process, it's fairly simple. You pick what kind of resource you want to publish, if it's applications or desktops, FV, and so on. And based on what you want to publish, it also asks if this is coming from RD session host, VDIs, or even a PC. And once you select, for example, installed applications, we can scan all of your farm or specific servers, and then you can do the publishing process. This is very similar to what you have today in Citrix. So let's say I want to pick, let me see here. Let me publish Notepad++ today. So I'll click on next, and once the application is published, it's here. It landed into my main folder. Once I save it, the next time I refresh my HTML5, that application will be already presented. So no need to ask users to log off, clear cache. No, it's pretty much real time. You can move the application to groups. So for example, I will move to my Victor apps, and here it's where you can set certain security aspects about access, filtering, and so on, or even limit the number of concurrent access of this application. So in the application side, here we see the path, quick keypads specifically for iPad and Android devices, or if it's going to start automatically. On the filtering side, right now it's open for all users. Easy. You just click allow the following users or groups. So you can either say, this is for my group called press. It will, let me just go here to Active Directory and grab a group, let's say domain users. And also I want to give a specific user to me. So you can use a different model, either groups or users or both at the same time. Once the application is published, you can define that. Other filtering methods can be by client device name, operating system, or even different IP addresses, gateways, and MAC addresses. Gateway is usually when we filter based upon location. Because you can have as many gateways, there's no price difference for that, or controllers, and then you can define the entry points for your organization. Shortcuts, similar to integrating with local desktops, you can create specific shortcuts and defaults for that matter. And here on the licensing side, it's where I mentioned to you, how many concurrent licenses do you want this application to run, or you set a cap for it, so it doesn't, violate existing maintenance contracts or other things that you might have with your software vendors. We can see running instances, and as well in the monitoring side for your farms, we provide complete overview about the sessions, where they're coming from, and you can control it pretty much sending messages, remote control, show processes, and let's say I have Excel running here, and from the admin side, I don't want this app to run anymore, or maybe, Excel froze, we can just kill the process, and that will be, closing on, right away. So again, here you have total control for that matter. When we speak about printing and scanning, it's by default available in remote application server without any additional costs, and we take over Citrix printing services once RAS is running in production. When I mention about connections and controls, here you have different settings about how sessions can behave, but what is important here is the easy integration with different providers. So here is where we have Azure MFA, Duo, or others that you might have, and or just typical Radius integration that you might need to do. So it is, part of the framework to be done. But a very good thing we have related to control policies, this is where we enhance a lot pure RDS deployments. And customers coming from Citrix think it's much easier to do our policy base than what we used to do before. So first of all, you can have criteria related from point of origin, and as well the device type they are connected. As you can see, by default, all devices will receive this particular policy. And you can control all sorts of things related to display. If you're allowing display settings to use the max compression and adaptive controls from a remote FX, color, or you're going to use multi-monitor for that feature, and so on. And related to control, in my environment for now, I'm blocking certain things. For example, clipboard action, now it's not controlled. Let's say I want to control it now. I want to control disk access, and actually I won't allow disk access direction. And you can allow or disallow USB devices. And here, if you allow USB devices, we do plug and play. Once they're plugged into the computer, wait for a few seconds, that will be also refreshing the remote session as well. Now, on the remote session side, or an experience itself, of course, we're always enabling compression for a streaming perspective, and as well for printing and scanning. And related to user profiles or bandwidth profiles, you can use what we call automatic detection, or pick a profile, keep it simple. So most of your users are working from home, use high speed. That's enough. No need to, try to figure out latency and other aspects, because this profile is already optimized for this kind of scenario. Now, if they're running high latency, you can use modem, or you pick the profile and really define what will be the experience settings for the end user. These controls here are always done from the console side, which means IT and business. And once it's pushed to the clients, users don't see those options. They're grayed out or hidden, so they don't know, or we reduce the complexity for them to see that. And on the administration side, here's where you control the admins, features, backups if you want to do it. And like I mentioned before, we have a monitoring tool that is gathering information from all of your farms or your components in the farms, like number of connections, throughput, and connections loss, and so on, which can trigger notifications. This module is included in RAS, and the idea here is to gather that information for you, and we can create notification reports or notification triggers for you to know if you're having disconnects or other problems happening in the infrastructure. Now I'm using here, which is taking a couple of seconds to load, it's general reporting. Like for example, application usage or user sessions per activity. So these two reports, by default, they give you the last 7 days, and we'll be able to see based on those metrics. For example, let me pick my name and click on view report. And for the last 7 days, how much time it was total time, disconnected time, what time was the login, the log off, and so on. And on the application usage side, we're monitoring all of the applications running on servers. The one that has the hashtag number is the RAS. So I can see the console is being used a lot. Outlook and Adobe are the most used apps. This one uses SQL Server Advanced or Express Advanced, or rather SQL Server database. Again, that's the reporting feature can be enabled, and there's no cost related to do that. The final piece that I wanted to highlight is related to the auto-scaling feature. So, and actually I'll cover a little bit on the Citrix migration side as well. So let me just go here very quickly to my remote environment here, which is running on Hyper-V. And I have a couple of templates. I have a Windows 10 template for typical VDI and a Windows Server 2016 VDI. And I have a couple of VMs running for remote RD sessions, actually, to serve application publishing. With this particular console, the idea here is the same, but what changes is this. If I go here to my farm, if I go to VDI, I'm talking to this RASLab Hyper-V machine, and like I saw before, I have a few virtual machines as templates. Where the templates live, they're right here. I have one for RDSH and another one for finance. And the templates, the way they operate, they can work independently from RDSH groups or VDI groups, but you can say the number of guests that you have, keeping a buffer alive. So I always keep one extra VM running. I can have 1, 2, maybe 5. And this is a concept that we call warm start. So let's say I have 10 RD session hosts for normal operation, and I need to go up 5 during the day when I have my peak hours. What happens here is we can add 2 more automatically. Once those 2 are used, we clone the other 3. And once the peak is achieved, the delta time between users to connect and have the service provisions ready because of cloning, processes and so on, it's very little, or pretty much none. So here is where you can actually set those parameters. And of course, besides draining, you can automatically delete these virtual machines after a day, a week, or 30 days, just, probably relieving, leaving some resources free. You can choose to either use full clones or link clones. Of course, we use link clones in this case to save disk space. Special license keys, preparation, doing for sysprep process, and so on. So when you have your groups, in the RD session groups, now this is where it's actually new. You have your groups and the templates. And using the general settings for the template, here's where you select which template you want to use. So the same template can be used in multiple groups without any issue. So you can have a cloning process for the same template in different locations, but you can have one-on-one relationship, if you will. We have one machine in the group, and here are the draining sessions or deployment sessions. Send requests to the templates to increase after 50%. Numbers to be added per request is 1, so you can set 1, 2, or 5. And max service for this particular group, and when you have the draining option to be achieved. For operation or Windows updates, this is a very cool thing. You can update directly the template, and once the template is, maintenance completed, you can recreate all of your guests. So if I click on this link over here, this will actually take a few minutes to be completed. We will send a signal to Hyper-V to power up the VMs and start recreating the group. So we identified, in fact, one of my VMs was missing, F1, because it was part of the group. And right now, we are automatically cloning from my templates the virtual machine, and it will be ready within the next few minutes. So here's, the use case about showing the templates in a very, very easy way to do that. Eric, you want to cover anything about this aspect, or should I just get along here a little bit further?
No, just go along. I have some comments at the end there, so.
Okay, super. So on the migration side, here is an example of a machine that actually, it's a clean slate virtual machine that I have. Let me just log in very quickly here to Hyper-V. And when we do the cloning part, this is running a little bit slow. So when we are working on, the Hyper-V on the licenses on the Citrix side, once the scripts are, running, we can parse information from one farm to another. So let me just log in here very quickly. And the process, it's super simple. You install in your Citrix environment the scripts, and once we collect the information, which I have already extracted here, in my folder called XenApp, which we are reading the following information from Citrix: workers group, applications, server, and zones. The migration tool basically will do the following. It will ask you to extract this information from Citrix, and then you read or execute the RAS migration script, either using this option or you just use the run feature. Once that it's actually executed, it will automatically populate the farm for you in RAS without making any changes to it. So running the PowerShell script, it will ask you user credentials and information about your farms. The process will be running in the background, which might take a couple of minutes because of my performance here on my Hyper-V. So it will asking you about execution of the the PowerShell, and once that it's completed, you can have that done. So the idea here is you can either use Azure actually adding the path, or running following our documentation, the script, where it will be grouping all of the files together and then loading them in. So I recommend, if you want to play around with the migration tool, it's something super simple to be done. Okay, so let me just go back here to my presentation and highlight one more thing in the RAS console, which is the licensing part. Depending on what you want to use as a model, you can always see your license consumption, the peaks, current users, license information for support purposes, and you can always click and see users that are connected in the system. Right now I have two people, James and myself, connected to this in particular environment. And from Parallels My Account perspective, you can manage your licenses online or through the console. Here you can go to the console, for example, and you can activate your licenses, and as well deactivate the license if you're moving from one server to another. So on the licensing side, one more thing that I wanted to highlight, it's called Parallels My Account feature. And from this particular portal, you can oversee all of your licenses. And make sure consumption or month-to-month usage is visible to you. So here I can see my subscriptions. I can see active subscriptions. I can go to my farm settings, and you can see the key details. We can get into the key and see who are the administrators for those keys. And we can get into the farm itself and get into month-to-month history billing. So this is just another option that comes with RAS, which simplifies the usage. For you to start the proof of concept, you can go to either on Amazon Web Services or Azure Marketplace. So if you go to Azure Marketplace, we can go and search for Parallels. And in the Marketplace, we have a full operational image that has all of the features of remote application server, which you can play around for 30 days for free. So we just here, we search for Parallels, and here you can get started. We provide videos and as well guides on how that can be used. If you use our Citrix migration tool, that can be also used inside this particular subset and move your settings from one farm to another. With that being said, let me just stop sharing and let's take a look into, looks like most of the questions here have been answered. Eric, you wanna add a little bit more into questions or comments at this point?
Yeah, do you have any demos of the MFA integration as of now?
Say it again. What's the question again?
So do you have a demonstration of the new MFA feature for the multi-factor authentication?
I don't have it running here in my environment at this point, but in the console itself, if you use Azure MFA, we can work with you on it. The only thing with the Azure MFA, what we need to be installed is the Azure MFA token server in your farm to handshake the Radius protocol. But I don't have it here yet. It's something we're activating within the next few weeks in our demo environment. But in the POC, it's available.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, this was just released last week, so probably you will need to set up the NPP and then enable the Azure MFA there.
Yeah,
another thing
exactly.
that another thing I would like to share with the audience, a lot of well-known names there. Thank you everyone for joining. Is the fact that this Parallels infrastructure runs really, really well on server core. So this is actually something they're not talking about, and I've told them to do better marketing on that part, because that would make your Parallels infrastructure even more secure by running headless on Windows Server. And right now, you are in Las Vegas. Is that correct, Victor?
Yes, I am actually attending Microsoft Inspire. Eric, good point. For gateways and controller pieces, you can use server core. The only piece that needs desktop experience is, of course, the RDS component. Yeah, I'm in Las Vegas. I arrive on Sunday night. I'm here until tonight, actually, meeting Microsoft and partners related how we can work together, or recent wins projects. We have worked with our partners on Azure and as well on on-premise customer base.
Exactly, and I was seeing that people were talking on Twitter about Keynote, but they talk about Core Node, because server core is going to be a really important part going further, and the cost is much lower than running your instances in the cloud. And of course now with Windows 2019, they now announced today that's going to be approved now in 24th of July. So so 2019 is around the corner. And if you have checked out my latest blog post about how to run applications that normally don't run on server core, make sure to check that out as well. But it's very interesting to see, and it's really nice to know that parallel infrastructure run on server core, and all the cool PowerShell stuff they keep adding. So the PowerShell module is getting better and better there. So
yeah, Eric, that's a good point about Windows Server 2019, because we're also in the testing phase of RAS, or that will run on Windows Server 2019. We're working with Microsoft on that side. And another interesting thing about Server Core, it's the Azure Platform as a Service offerings, right? They're pushing that super hard this year. And we're starting to work with a few customers deploying Server Core on Azure for gateway traffic or tunneling, and us working with Azure high availability and VPN services to deploy hybrid deployments. So it's becoming more typical, little by little, right? Working on, public cloud services and bridging on-premise deployments with what cloud option or Azure AWS clouds customers are moving forward.
Exactly, and now with the former Project Honolulu, which is now named Windows Admin Center, you see more and more vendors creating their own plugins. So you will expect to see more there coming in the future.
Okay, so I don't see any additional questions, so I guess we're complete here or done, and we'll share the recording of this session within the next couple of days, I believe. And if there are more questions, please come to Eric or myself, and we're more than happy to work with you.
Exactly. So just reach out on Twitter for XenApp blog or Parallels RAS, or you can even open a ticket on support RAS, and you will get help there even if you're not a customer. So don't be shy, reach out, and I'm gonna send out this webinar recording probably tomorrow or the day after, so you can rewatch and share it with your colleagues. So thank you everyone for joining in, and Victor, enjoy your time in Las Vegas.
Thank you, and you all have a great day.
Thank you, and bye-bye.